We'll wait for 2 minutes and then we will start. Let more people join. Hello, welcome everyone to our webinar. We are delighted to have you all join us for the insightful session on PCB categorization demystified, compliance, consent, and environmental obligations. It is our privilege to welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Venkatesh Sir, legal expert EHS compliances at Aprajita, a distinguished professional with over 23 years plus experience in law, academia, and industry. In today's session, Dr. Venkatesh Sir will provide us practical insight into PCB industry categorization and its impact on CTE, CTO, inspections, renewal, and environmental compliances obligation, helping organizations strengthen compliance and reduce regulatory risk. Before we start with today's session, I request everyone to post their questions in Q&A section so that we can take them at the end of the session. So now I invite Dr. Venkatesh sir to take over the session and enlighten us.
Okay. Thank you, Shreya. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I am audible. And thank you for joining this webinar session. Let me put my slide. So, hope it's visible in slideshow mode, Shreya.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Can you
okay.
just put the bigger screen?
Let me see.
So that we don't see the next slide.
Oh, I don't know. Once, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is. Slide. No, not this. Once. Not this. This. Okay. Is it okay now?
Yes, perfect, sir.
Okay. So in today's webinar session, we will be discussing about the PCB categorization, the scheme, the calculations, and what to expect in terms of compliance. Okay. So with this, just to set the context. The main impetus for this webinar is we have been getting a lot of query on this categorization, the scheme, and the calculation involved. So we thought we will have a webinar for the general extended audience. Okay. to set the context rolling, just this slide highlights the evolution of environmental legislation in India. Okay, it goes back to 100 years, where the first Bombay Smoke Nuisance Act was enacted. Then the Forest Act was a big, legislation. And initial years till 1970s, it was restricted only to animals and forest and natural resources. The epoch-defining moment happened in environmental legislation in India in 1974, where the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act was enacted. And contrary to the common belief, this is the act which established pollution control boards across the country. The constitution of Pollution Control Board was provided under this act. Okay, this was the first act specific to water. Okay. Similarly, after a few years down the line, we had an Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. So only difference, the major difference is you can just take the word water and substitute in air, you will get that act pretty much. There was no big change or any scheme or any new provisions introduced. It was for different subject matter. First was water, then air. Okay. Then in 1986, we had the main act, specific act to cover the entire environment, the Environment Protection Act, EPA in short. This happened in 1986. This act is a very unique act in the sense that if one looks at this act, there won't be much compliances specified by this act, but rather it gives the framework for the environmental laws. So the most of the compliances will be emanating from the rules, regulations, but not from the act. Okay. So, as I said, the enactment of Water Act in 1974 was an epoch-defining moment in Indian environmental laws, and it provided for the constitution and establishment of Pollution Control Board, and it specifically mentions both CTE, CTO compliance requirement, the consent. Okay. And the 1981 Air Act pretty much follows the Water Act. So this consent management was introduced in 1974, but one looks at the actual ground reality, only in late 80s things started getting enforced, mostly primarily because of the environmental activism and a slew of judgments from the Honorable Supreme Court, the famous being the MC Mehta case. And specifically for this industry classification, there was in 1980s, mid 80s, 88, I believe, there was a famous case law, Doom Valley case law, wherein this concept of classifying industry based on the pollution it creates was introduced, and it was a mandate from the Supreme Court, a judgment authored by the famous jurist Justice Jagannath Mishra. Following that, basically the three-level categorization happened. We will see a brief historical background of this categorization. So this was basically started in Uttarakhand, Doon Valley. This was specific to the quarrying of limestone in and around the ecologically very sensitive, diverse, valley region. And they introduced this concept of red, orange, and green in terms of classifying the industry. However, when one looks at the classification, it was kind of arbitrary and it was kind of subjective, and it was mostly based on the industry types, not on the actual pollution or the pollutants or the activities performed by the industry, nor the kind of damage it creates to the environment. So in 2010, there was a serious deliberation happened. A working group was formed, which paved the way for the harmonization of this classification system. So initially it was very subjective and there was a wide gap. Okay? Then there was another impetus happened 5 years down the line where we had the National Environment Ministers Conference. As you know, all the different states and the central, they have to collaborate, work hand in hand. And that was the first time where analytical scientific categorization was proposed. And that was the way forward. And that was the starting point of this present categorization. 1 year down the line, in 2016, this was the most important year to remember. This is where the actual pollution index-based classification was introduced, which was output of the earlier conferences and the methods initiated. Okay. So initially, uh, they had these levels for the various category. 4 category was proposed at that time. The levels was marked in black. It was red greater than 60 and orange, between 41 and 59 for this index. But the present day, what is being followed for this index is given in green within brackets. Like if the index is above 80, it is red. If it is between 55 and 79, it is orange. Okay, and white category, which was introduced for the first time, which is if the index is less than 24, less than or equal to 24, then it is white. And what is white means? White category means it's exempted from consent. So there was a direction from the Central Pollution Control Board, which said for practically these sectors are um, non-polluting, considered non-polluting. Still, they have some indexation, considered non-polluting, and they are exempted from consent management. Okay. And the Central Pollution Control Board, even though they have uh, envisaged these categorization and harmonization, the implementation directions were given to the respective state pollution control board or the pollution control committee in the case of union territories, because they are the statutory authority who give the consent. Okay. But this is a direction which is binding and which is the basis for the entire country. Okay. Then subsequently, um, the enforcement happened uniformly. The adaptation by the states started rolling out in 2019 onwards. And 2020, there was a reclassification exercise continually happening. And currently, we have this 2025 classification system where they have expanded the number of industries and they introduce a new category, blue category. Blue category is for essential environmental services. For example, if there is a, you know, sewage treatment plant or waste management landfills, those are considered essential environmental services. Those come under blue category. We will see a little later about them. Okay. So this has been the evolution of this categorization. And what we can expect is this is going to be an ongoing exercise. Okay, more industries will be added. Okay. So with this, briefly, let us look at what is the statutory framework or the force of law from which this categorization exercise and this compliance requirement, this mandatory thing follows. It basically comes from the three acts. One is Water Act, and the second is Air Act, which specifies mandatory consent requirement for any industry before commencing their activity. And the powers of Pollution Control Board, the various powers, there are various provisions of both the Air Act, Water Act, and majorly the Environmental Protection Act 1986. It gives the power and functions of Pollution Control Board, to take appropriate measures, prescribe standards, give directions in respect of prevention and control of pollution. That's where the main power comes from, where this categorization and enforcement of these measures comes into picture. Okay. So basically, these are the statutory force or the backing for this industry categorization. Because any exercise done by the authority, there should be a force of law. So this is the force of law. Okay. So with this, let's go into the directly dive into the scheme. What is the scheme? So this is based on a single parameter pollution index, which is a cumulative parameter. We will see next what it comprises of. And based on the numerical value for a given industry or a given entity or an establishment or a factory or a unit, the scheme of color code is given in this. So if it is greater than 79, if the number pollution index comes out to be greater than 79, then it is considered red category. If it is between 55 and 79, it is orange. 25 and 54 green. If it is less than 25, it is white. Okay. And the other one is essential environmental services. This is for domestic and household waste management. It's called a blue category, and this is to be notified by the government, central government specifically. Okay, there are various different general waste management activities which comes under this. We will see a list later. Okay. So this is the scheme. And what is this pollution index? This pollution index is based on three scores, three numerical scores. One is water pollutant score, air pollutant score, and third is waste pollutant score. So water pollutant, the things which pollute the water, all the chemical and technical and other parameters, related to pollution. Then similarly for air, like the exhaust and various pollutants. And waste has two things. One is hazardous waste, and the other one is biomedical waste. Okay. So this is how for the three components they are. And what are these scores? How are they calculated? It is calculated out of 100. It's normalized to 100. Okay. So the maximum value anything can have is 100. Okay. And the actual score depends on a slew of parameters, multitude of parameters and factors like the actual pollutants, the extent of pollutants present, the emission in case of air pollution, and the type of fuel used, the energy used. There is a whole lot of parameter. It's purely technical, chemical in nature. We won't be discussing those. Okay. So based on the different combination, there is a formula and these scores are derived. Okay. And they have also subgrouped these scores. In case of water and air scores, there are three subscores. And in the case of hazardous waste, there are two subscore. And in the case of biomedical, there is only one subscore. Okay. And in turn, these scores will have various parameters. So we will have a quick look at them just for the completeness sake. Okay. So now we have all these different scores. How is the pollution index calculated? So like I said, so there are three subscores for water pollutant and there are three subscores for air pollutant. They are just added, okay, and normalized to a maximum of 100. Everything is the PIW, the water index, is a sum of the three individual scores. Similarly, air index is sum of three air scores. And in the case of hazardous waste, there is H1 and H2, and biomedical, it will be only one. Okay. So now we have the three scores. So what do we do with this? This is the formula to get the pollution index. So we have three numbers, which runs from 0 to 100 for each one of them. And this I max is the maximum of the three. So that is I max. And I2 and I3 are the remaining two scores. So what is this? This is basically a weighted average. Instead of a simple average, we have a weighted average, because simple average will skew the numbers. So for example, if there is only one, let's say water pollution in a particular unit, and there is no air pollution or hazardous waste, so the score for air and hazard will be 0. And for water, let us say it is 50 or 60. So now if you take an average, it will be 60 plus 0 plus 0. You will get it 30. But actually the water is getting polluted at the level of 60, but you end up getting a 30. That is the reason why simple average is not there, but a weighted average. So that appropriate weightage is given to the maximum polluting um, entity among the three. Okay. So this is how it is calculated. So with this, let's see some examples. Okay. This is from actual latest classification scheme. Okay. So if you look at the top row, you will have the sector and the various scores, sub-scores, and the total and some remarks on the category. So if you look at manufacturing, so of automobiles, obviously it will have various, all the parameters, the water, air, and hazardous. So this is how it is distributed. So you have the three scores, 75, 25, and 45, and then you plug it into that formula, the formula for pollution index, which is like a weighted average. You see that the maximum is water. So you take 75 and then you plug into those formula and you get 83, which is above 79. So it is a red category industry. So if you look at the third example, this is where we are talking about. So it's Almera Gill manufacturing. So basically it is 0 for water and hazardous. So it has only 1. So it gives the same weighted average. If you take the bottom, if you go to brick manufacturing, similar. So, but the air pollution, because there is a lot of emission, and there is burning of fuel. So you see that this weighted average will give you the correct picture rather than a simple average. Okay. So basically, this categorization was done for a lot of industry, and every now and then it gets revised, and we have currently more than 4,400. Sorry, 400. Okay. So next we will see some good good resources. Okay, so we'll go to this. This is let's wait. Okay, I hope. Yeah, this is the one. I hope you can see the browser. So this is a fantastic online resource. It has a whole lot of data. And if you look at this, this is what the latest classification, which I was referring to. And it has all the various notifications and all the tools required. In fact, it has online tools, to calculate the pollution index. So I have, and they have a very good user manual, so you can do it yourself. And this is that online calculator. Okay. And this, I hope everybody can see. So it gives you more than 450 sectors. It has all the things. This is the latest one. You can just browse, and it gives you, if your particular activity unit falls exactly into this, you can directly check what category it is. And the impact of this is basically on the duration of consent. So that is the main impact, the duration how long the consent, how many years the consent is given for. Okay. If your entity is not listed, what do you do? Or in other words, what do the pollution control board do? They take this as a guideline and directly only, but the actual consent, actual category will depend on the exact score for the pollution index. So for that, there is a calculator also. So this is the formula we saw. And as we discussed earlier, this is consent is given by the individual state or union territory. Okay. So these are the three scores: water pollutant, air pollutant. Okay. So if you click on this is where all the different parameters, mostly they will be, chemical compounds and the range of, oxygen demand in water is the range. So BOD stands for biochemical oxygen, which is the oxygen needed for the bacteria and bioorganisms um, to take care of the organic matter in the water. And the COD is for the chemical oxygen. Okay. So the three subscores are W1, W2, and W3. These are the three subscores where, and within that there are various other category, like different chemicals based on the chemical nature, and the pH is there. So all this. So in your particular manufacturing process or business activity, what are the things which contribute to this pollution? So you have to choose this. And once you enter, you will get a value for the scores. Similarly, can do it for air, which is quite involved. Okay. And for waste also. So like we said, for hazardous waste, there will be two scores, two subscores, H1 and H2. And for biomedical, it will be one. So these will be based on the extent or the quantum of hazardous waste produced. Similarly, different specification biomedical, it is based on the number of beds. Okay. So with this, we can do a self assessment of our industries or units pollution index, and this is the range. Okay. So notwithstanding what is given in the classification scheme, like these sectors, the actual score is what the pollution control board will take into account. Okay. So this is the okay. So let me go back to the presentation. Oh, so let us see the exact yeah. So this is the actual latest classification as of 12th January this year. This is what it is. So this will give the list of industries. So basically, this is what I had taken a snapshot from is. So you have a whole lot of industry listed and individual scores, the index and the category is given. Okay. And even when this was implemented is given. Couple of practical things is with respect to the CTE, CTO, this came earlier, it's been, 5 months now. So when the 2025 notification came, the position is very clear. If the CTE application was pending and when the revision has happened during the pendency, the application will be processed with the revised classification categorization. This is very important to know, okay, because there's a lot of confusion. So I have somebody applied 3 months ago, 2 months ago, but in the meantime, the revision happened. When the application is processed, only the new set of revision. That's what the law says. Okay. That's one use case. The next use case is about CTO. So initially we get the CTE, consent to establish. So we establish, let's say it falls under orange category for some reason, just for understanding. Then before the commencement of operation, we apply for CTO, and let's say it has revised to red. So when we go for CTO, we will be classified under red. So it's very clear that 2025 notification, even 2016 notification expressly mentions this. So it's unlike the other usual thing where prospective application changes, does not happen in law. Here it is sensitive and it's related to pollution. This is the position of law. So we cannot take records that no, we had already applied, and at that time it was the different classification. So this I want everybody to take home. This is a very important aspect. Okay. And essential environment. These are all notified. So if you look like at that, these will be like common things notified, like common effluent treatment plan, hazardous waste management facility, a common biomedical treatment facility, municipal waste management. So like that, these are all currently we have this many. Okay. Then there is another classification. This is just for bookkeeping and information system, but to get an idea of how they have done. This is a sector for infrastructure. So if you're involved in infrastructure, this is the place. So here there will be a couple of interesting things to note. First is the genset. For example, let's say that your industry is white. I think biscuit manufacturing, top of my head comes to my mind. It's classified as white industry. And as we saw earlier, for white category, there is no consent. However, let us say that you are using a big genset in a white category industry, and the capacity is greater than 1 million volt ampere or voltage. This is classified as green. Then your industry will become green, not white anymore. This is a very important thing. Okay. So, and this is cumulative. Okay, so if you have 5 genset and each is having 200 kVA, the total will cross 1 MVA. Okay. And this is the differences based on the fuel. Liquid fuel is more polluting compared to gaseous fuel. That's why the change in category. Okay. Other infrastructure sectors are like airport, healthcare. It also has quite a bit, railways, ports, harbor, automobiles, like that, dairy farm. Various things are there. Okay. See, look at this dairy farm, 500 animal count by the animal count. Okay. So this is how the things are classified as of now, and the actual classification you have to go back to the calculation of the pollution index, and then only you will get the exact. Okay. And just for completeness, this is the user manual. They have a nice user manual, step by step. They have given the background and how to get this calculator, Excel based, macro based calculator. It gives you exactly each step. Okay. So these are the technical parameters. And these are the couple of important notification which you can download from these websites. This is from the 2016. This is the first one where we had this scientific, analytical, parametric based harmonized categorization system. And this is the 2025 where the ranges were revised, and this traces a good history, and it gives you the exact details, and it gives you more details on how these individual subscores are calculated, what are the different parameters, which we saw in the macro, Excel-based macro. So those things are in detail, they are discussed in these files. Those are the files which are given here, the manual and the recent classification system. Okay. With this, we'll summarize today's presentation. First one is it's a uniform parametric analytical classification system based on the single pollution index. Okay, so it's very analytical. There is no subjectivity involved. It's very objective determination, unlike the starting point in late 80s. Okay. And the key thing you have to remember is this is only for concern management. This is not related to the environment clearance, licenses, authorization, other EHS compliances emanating from various laws. Okay. This is only for the consent. For the purpose of consent management, this categorization is there. Okay. In fact, in the notification, they have expressly mentioned that this categorization has no bearing even on getting funding. Okay. Because there are some restrictions the banks are putting. So they said that expressly in the notification that this does not impact those other aspects. Okay. So what does this characterization guideline do? Basically, at this point in time, there are about 453 sectors and sub-sectors. For additional and residual classification, the power is with the State Pollution Control Board or the Pollution Control Committee in the case of UT. So if your industry is not present in the central PCB list, you have to look at the state list because the states are empowered to classify based on this scheme and this calculation, of course. Okay. And the central list consists of 4 sets, namely the industrial, then environmental services, essential environmental service, which is basically notified services by the central government. Then infrastructure and the special category. Okay. And again, to reiterate, the state pollution control board or the committee are empowered to make further addition of leftover or new sectors as per the indexation score scheme. Okay. And finally, the actual exact categorization for a particular unit, factory or institution or establishment depends on the pollution index. Even though we have these 450 plus sectors categorized, the actual thing will be determined based on the pollution index. And to reiterate, if there is a change or deviance between the pollution control index and the categorization list, whichever on the higher category would be taken by the pollution control board. Okay. If the index comes to, let's say, 75 for a particular unit, but if that industry is classified as red category, then it will be categorized as red category only. Even though your score is only 75, which is less than 80, it won't go to orange. Okay. So you have to keep this in mind. There is a lot of confusion regarding this particular aspect. That's why I am re-emphasizing this particular thing. Okay. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat box.
So currently we are having one question. The person has
Okay.
asked how to access CPCB website for CTE.
So the CTE, CTO is actually given by the particular state, not the CPCB. Only the state pollution control board, they give the consent, not the Central Pollution Control Board. Number one. And nowadays, there is a centralized portal, both maintained by the central government. Let me see whether I can get it from here. I can show you. There is a central portal. I don't remember on top of my head. I don't think so. Yeah, there is a central portal maintained by the central government, which has two things. Number one is it has all the department common portal for consent, authorization, license, permit, and all. And they have it for the state governments also. Okay. And with the new solid waste management rules kicking in, there is a new revamp is proposed for having a common portal. Okay. But currently, it is not the central government, it is the state government. You have to go to the respective state government PCB website. You will see the link there also. And there is a central portal also. Okay.
Okay. So we are having one more question. Uh, will generation of other waste categories like e-waste or solid waste will have any impact on category?
So, as far as I think it's a very good question. It's a very important question. I didn't spend time on this. The EHS law compliances is different, and this is only for consent. Okay, this is number one. For the category classification, we said there are three parameters: the water index, water score, air score, and waste score. If you look at the waste score, there are basically two things: hazardous waste and biomedical waste. Okay. So if you get into hazardous waste, then that category will impact. Okay. For example, even if you take e-waste, if you look at the definition of e-waste, hazardous waste, the definitions are little exclusive. Even in e-waste, if there are hazardous component, then that will come into this hazardous. See, for example, electronic devices, they use heavy metals. Heavy metals are considered hazardous. So your e-waste, if it consists of any hazardous waste, then you have to estimate those two scores, H1, H2. Now there are two sub-scores. Then it will impact. Okay. If it is non-hazardous, then it won't come. Okay. But as far as the compliance is concerned, these are very exclusive, because hazardous waste compliance will be following hazardous waste management rules. E-waste management rules will be following the e-waste management, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Okay. We'll just take few more questions. One is CTO renewal or update required during building interior fit out projects for existing buildings?
So it's a very open-ended generic question. So the safest answer is yes, because without going into details of what kind of changes you are making, it's very difficult to answer. That's number one. Number two, why it is a safe answer to assume is, if you look at this, your CTO or CTE, at the end of it, they would have given a lot of conditions. If you happen to satisfy any of this condition, then you have to do amendment and you have to get approval, because the consent is very specific for a given activity, given infrastructure, given material, given process flow, given pollution. If anything changes in it, you have to get a consent. And this doesn't come just from the consent condition. It actually comes from the Air Act and Water Act. If there is any change, you have to, because its consent is to do these particular things. Okay. So the safest answer presumption is you have to go for change. Okay.
Okay.
And just to, not to fear mongering. This is a gap we noticed in various industry. Once they give consent and they think that this won't impact, but actually most often it ends up impacting. Okay. Maybe we will take two more questions
Yeah,
and rest we will take it offline.
yeah, sure. One is, what is the measure to be taken to change from red to other category?
Oh, okay. So that aspect I did not cover because it's more of you know practical aspect. There is something called star scheme, okay, where uh, if it is really polluting, and if the score is consistently higher, then we don't have a case. Okay. Otherwise, let us say that we are introducing measures to reduce the pollutant levels, and we religiously follow all the standards prescribed under various acts, and we show case, I think for a continuous 3 years or 5 years, and the scheme keeps changing. There is an incentive mechanism built in the system, so that what they do is, rather than changing the category per se, they will give extended validity period. See, one of the main difference for these different categories, apart from the cost involved in getting the application, the duration, like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, so that they give some incentive, so that can be done. That's number one. Number two, it has a very technical answer to the question is, see, when we want to change from one category to another category, what has to be done is we have to change the kind of pollutants we are introducing into the system from our processes. If that can be tightened by changing either your material or your process or combination thereof, thereby, if you are using clean energy, clean process, very less wastage, then automatically your scores can be altered, reduced. That is the practical way to do things. Other than that, this is pretty tight objective classification.
Okay. So I'll take the last question. Will the categorization differ state-wise?
So actually, no, and a little bit yes is also there. Where it becomes uh, changing is, at the end, we discussed about residual additional leftover categories that individual states can come up differently. Okay. Because if you look at these parameters, okay, it is based on a certain understanding of the nature of pollutants, the extent of pollution, and then they calculate this. And it is the honors of the state to do it, and the express power is there for the same. So if they use different metrics, if they use different data for a particular industry, because this is not just based on one particular unit, you go and measure various things and then you come up with the index. No, it is for an industry you are doing it. If the industry practices vary from region to region, the kind of material, the process, and the understanding the engineering process, then it could change. Okay, this is number one. Number two is, um, it is not only based on the actual industry, the concentration of industry is different for different states, and the pollution base level is different. So the individual states are empowered to categorize which is more beneficial to the particular state. However, the caveat is, if the central government guideline says a particular industry is orange, they cannot make it green. It can be other way around only. They can make it more stringent to red, or they can keep it as orange. They cannot make it green. In fact, this discrepancy was there in 1980s and 90s. That was the main reason why this parametric, scientific, analytical, objective classification scheme was specifically introduced for this reason alone. Even then, there will be slight variation. Okay. So the short answer of it is, it's generally there won't be much variation, but you can expect. That's why the key parameter is you have to find out in your state what is the thing. So if you're operating in multi states, you have to check each state, because the state themselves only give you the consent, not the central government. Okay.
Okay. So thank you, sir. Rest, if anyone has any question, kindly put it in the Q&A or chat box. We will address it over a email. And thank you, sir, so much for the uh, session which you have given. We are having now a brief understanding about the consent and categories and pollution index. So it was a very insightful session. And thanks
Yeah.
everyone for being a nice public. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for the questions. I hope it was useful. Have a good
Yes, sir.
evening. Bye.
Bye.